No, turn it up. What you got, Madonna on? What you got?
You know what? I got the 80s. The people knew.
Oh, he's got Vogue. He's got Madonna on
People
right
really
now.
knew the music from which sermons are created.
This is how the sausage gets made.
This is how the sausage gets made.
Listening to Madonna.
It could have been Led Zeppelin.
It could have been a lot of
Or
things.
you could have called my country genre.
Right.
Toby Keith.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know.
I got nothing for that.
Whitewater Crossing is a 106-year-old collection of Jesus followers that refuses to act its age. At a time when congregations are drifting into irrelevance, with their buildings being converted into wedding venues and breweries, Whitewater has fought and found a way to consistently reinvent to provide hope to the community. Thousands have gathered week after week, hundreds of lives forever altered, honest stories of pain were shared, lasting partnerships developed with school systems, all in an effort to meet real needs, help people have a voice and feel loved. Some might say that the best days are behind Whitewater, or that work should be done to preserve and restore, instead of embracing change and looking toward the future. One dynamic factor in the success of Whitewater has been David Vaughn. There is no mistaking his fingerprints all over what God has done in this ministry. But with David's upcoming retirement, how will his legacy carry forward? What will Whitewater look like 10 years from now? It's possible it will become yet another vacant facility whose impact in the community peaked, only to decline once its transformational leader moved on. Whitewater is not alone in this struggle. Entire countries must navigate the transfer of leadership while keeping the peace and maintaining progress. Companies must find a way to innovate and embrace change, or deal with the consequences of being left behind. Look no further than Blockbuster, Macy's, or Toys R Us to see the effects of leadership's unwillingness or inability to forecast what was to come.
We did not have God as a center point in our marriage. We knew we both came out of dysfunctional homes, and we knew that we didn't want that. We wanted something better. And Jack and I were baptized on Father's Day of 1953, and when he came up out of that baptistry, he was a different man. And I was a different woman. And we had a different home.
My parents attended Westwood Cheviot, the name of Whitewater before it became Whitewater. And so I grew up there, as well as my wife did.
I have been at Whitewater all of my life, which is a really, really long time. Back to Westwood Cheviot days and the days of Dr. Hockley.
When Harold Hockley was there, you were proud to be a member of Westwood Cheviot.
They were great. They were a part of our life when we needed it. It's like anything else. When somebody who's been there 34 years retires, all of a sudden the old school is gone and somebody comes in.
I think the leadership was trying to get these ministers to bend back to the glory days, and I think that's what really caused the rift.
Some of them were timid, some of them were aggressive, and we finally found one that was both.
We were living on the coast of Virginia. We were 13 years into ministry there. And then I think it was around Thanksgiving or right before Thanksgiving, he says to me, I don't think we should be searching, but I think we should be open.
We were hoping for a lot. We didn't know if we could convince this guy who was doing a great ministry in Virginia Beach to come to a smaller church in Cincinnati.
So it was Sunday night. We got on a return flight. And we sat down and he says to me, what do you think? And I said to him, this church needs you, so I think we're moving to Cincinnati. And that was it. We never looked back.
My memory is a breath of fresh air because there was a lot of uncertainty at the church at that time, and so he brought a lot of hope and excitement to the church. Actually, when David came on, we already had ideas about this property.
Driving around with David and Donna, and this subject came up. And I said, David, I got just the thing.
And I remember sitting in our car and Dave pulling out a big push pin board that had a map that showed all of the different neighborhoods around this property that could be like the fish that we're fishing for.
I pointed to David, I said, here, look at these neighborhoods going in. Look at these neighborhoods going in.
It just seemed like a strange way to show a potential minister what our plans were, and I was afraid we'd scare David away, but he came anyway.
But I'm here to tell you that the future of this church is not on Glenmore Avenue. It's off of Route 128.
Somebody did it for us when we were young, and then we carried the torch for a long time, and we will continue.
Unless we win these young people, there's no future to the church.
Because God's got a lot more in store for this church than maybe we even realize.
He was not afraid to speak his mind to his eldership or to his congregation.
We're about lost people. We always have been, we always will be. So if that doesn't excite you, this is probably the time to exit.
We got a few ornery people in this church too. They just tick me off, always griping, always complaining.
The natural gravitational pull of a church is insider focus. Members' preferences, members' needs, me, my needs, my wants, my desires. We're for the one, but guess what? The one's not you. Oh.
Actually, I think David overall had a positive experience at First Summer. There were some negatives, but yeah.
Particularly when David came, there was this group within the church that really felt like, it was a Sunday school class, it really felt like their agenda was more important than the elders' agenda. And there was this conflict. They were encouraging people to come to Sunday school class, but hey, you don't need to go to worship because it's really not good, you know? And David came on board and he saw that. And he wasn't going to put up with that.
To David's credit, he faced it head on, and he basically walked into a room with all of these people, and it was like a come to Jesus moment, I think.
Told them very specifically, hey, you either need to get on board or there's going to be some changes here. And consequently, that class did turn around, but it lost a few people.
You know, my goal when I showed up was to survive. You know, I was going to make sure that I didn't quit, and I wasn't going to get run off. In fact, I decided just to stay to spite some people. They never knew that. You're not going to run me off. Because first I was hurt, and then I got mad. That's like a holy anger.
People felt like this is a young guy. Does he really know? He's not Harold Hockley. He has a little bit of a Kentucky twang to him, you know.
You know, I smell some Starbucks coffee brewing back there. And you know me, I love that coffee. So I'm gonna go back here and get a cup.
He maybe is not reverent as much as we felt like the mold of Westwood Cheviot was. He used props in his messages, and quite often some of us would even dress up in costumes.
I was the first guy who didn't wear a tie. I was the first guy who wore blue jeans. I was the first guy who used jokes. There wasn't a lot of laughing in the Westwood Cheviot. Very formal, very liturgical.
One guy said, we're just too pooped to whoop. That's what he said.
David knew what to do when he had to be quiet, and he also knew what he had to do when he had to speak and had to act.
Had some elders already trying to get the church healthy. They were just looking for a guy who could preach, love lost people, wouldn't quit.
When he said that we needed to move, Jack had a smile that went from ear to ear, and he said, he came home and he said, you know what? We're gonna move. I said, you and I are gonna move? He said, no, the church is gonna move. That's unheard of. I'm sorry. That church has been there on that corner for 100 years.
We weren't able to buy just part of it, so we had to buy the whole 74. Well, that came with a big price tag. So David had to figure out, how we're gonna raise the money to do this.
It's just like anything else that's new. You have to grow.
This is your church. This is your building. Thank you for letting me be a part of something I could only dream about or only read about happening in other churches. I give you glory. God, I'm here to serve as long as you want me to. When it's my time to be done, just tap me and say, Dex.
I can say without a doubt, because I'm the only one that can say it, I believe, is that he is the same in person, on the platform, in public, that he is in private. He is the same man.
I just happened to be the right guy at the right time. God was ready to do something, and he used me to, this sanctified clay, to just keep prodding and keep plodding along.
Pick it up from here. Okay, you want me to go? Yeah. Okay, prepare the way, Lord. Prepare the way, Lord. Okay, I got rampant.
The tree was turning brown. The stalks.
I knew it wasn't going to be easy to talk about all this stuff, because I don't like to talk about me. I don't. It's uncomfortable.
In 2011, I was asked by the elder chairman, who was Bob Hastings at the time, to be a leader of a strategy team that the elders had put together to address succession planning. And it was to take a long-term look at what does succession mean for a church.
And that's when David said, we don't need a 60-year-old pastor of this church.
I actually initiated it.
So we need to start looking at some things now.
Years ago, I said to him, I really don't feel like you should be here past the age of 62.
You know, there were studies done of what did other larger churches do, what were the good things, what were the bad things, and I think what he and the elders have come down upon has been a very healthy transition.
Every pastor is an interim pastor. I just hold it loosely. I love this city, I love this town, but it's never been my church. So I think succession fundamentally says Jesus is Lord of his church. He's the CEO. I just happen to sit in this chair for a season and hopefully be the best steward that I can be.
I've seen too many stay too long, and I did not want that to be us. I didn't want it to be him, and he knew that. He was in total agreement with that.
We had no intention of trying to replicate or clone David. His skill set, his spiritual gifts were so much in line with helping lead a congregation from Glenmore Avenue down to Route 128 and thriving. But others not the same, that will be able to take us into the future, building on what David has already established here.
I think for some people, particularly people who have grown with him over the years, they have in their head that's the way a minister should be.
But when you're wanting to do something different, it takes a different kind of vision and a different kind of leader. The mission absolutely is the same. That was that cultural fit, that passionate fit we were looking for, the person that no matter what is going to reach people for Jesus.
We work through a company called Slingshot, who specializes in this area and has a significant amount of experience with the Christian church.
Slingshot helped us draw that pool of candidates down to 12. We actually interviewed 7.
Even before it was, I'm going to interview for the position, there was a brief conversation, and my response, if I quote, has a cuss word in it, so is that okay? So it's, quote, "There's no way in hell I'm moving to Cincinnati," end quote. So, no, it was really like, there is not a chance that I'm gonna move to Cincinnati. Why would we do that? And so that was the honest, kind of in the moment response.
So as they narrowed it down, we interviewed the final 2.
And I was talking to John just out of the blue. We had texted something, and he was saying, "Can you believe it? I'm one of the top 3 candidates for Whitewater." He said, "I've told them everything. I've put it out there. I've almost over-exaggerated to let them know exactly who I am, what I've done, everything about me, no stone unturned. I gave it to them. And they still wanted me? Can you believe it?"
After conversation, I guess it was more like, well, yeah, you should definitely consider this. And if we have to have a conversation about moving to Cincinnati, if it actually becomes a tangible thing, then we'll do that. But we put it off for a very long time.
The thing that took John to the top of the list, that really sealed the deal for the team, was his story.
I was looking for Jesus to be working in his life and his story. He has a history. I was well aware of his history. but I wanted to see if that was a capital H, his story.
John is a person who's profoundly concerned for lost people. I think what you're going to see with him, because it's what's in him, is this openness to everyone. It is a theological value for him, but it's also just a deep personal value. He's an incredibly inclusive person.
They offered him the job. It really wasn't much of a conversation after that. It was just like we already knew that it was what we were supposed to do.
And he has some raw material that is way beyond what I had when I started. He's much better at his age than I was when I showed up at that same age here.
To be honest, I was a bit nervous to start the process of somebody new, because I'm like, how are they ever gonna measure up? David's his just visionary leadership and his heart for lost people.
I had preconceived notions, and they were incorrect. I didn't know who he was going to be when I sat down and talked with him. And when we finally met, I won't say he had the deer in the headlights look, but it was pretty close.
He looked us straight in the eyes and he said, you really want to meet, you want to take a chance on me. Are you serious about this?
The second I met John Tizovich, I just knew. We had this instant just connection. I was like, this is a guy that I will follow, because this guy loves Jesus. I can tell by the way he loves his family, by the way that he interacts with people, and the same exact things that I loved about David were in John too.
Is that a Chris thing?
New employee.
Okay,
oh no, you weren't copied on it.
So it's happened already. We're hiring people I don't even know about it. And of course John knows.
All right, to be fair, it just went from Jess to me, Nick, and Chris.
Let me tell you what's going on here. It's David who?
You have been
It's David who already.
You've been officially ousted.
Yeah.
February of 2020, when we had made our decision as an elder board collectively, consensus, unanimous, that he was the guy to put on the path for succession.
I'm just gonna sit and I'm just gonna soak, and I'm gonna take the next 6 months and be a fly in the wall. And that was the plan.
As you recall, as everybody will so painfully recall, February 2020 was like the end of life as we knew it. Because in March, masks and toilet paper shortages and everything else, the world just fell apart.
That plan went out the window because it was, David said it's all hands on deck.
It gave John a chance to really lead in a tough environment. He's been challenged.
It forced you and I to jump into the deep end with sharks, with laser beams on them, with lava around us. We found out really fast who we really were.
I see COVID has allowed us to accelerate our relationship in ways that never could have been done.
So right away we found out, oh, this dude loves Jesus, this dude is mission focused, this guy's heart is for the lost, and it wasn't about let's make sure we lift up X, Y, or Z well during a succession. It's like, no, let's make sure Jesus is glorified throughout this whole thing.
The direction of our church hasn't changed. The mission and the vision have stayed the same. The methodologies, the strategies, the styles, those have all changed, but that's not what's important. What's important is, are we trying to reach lost people?
I thought being a Christian meant you had to be perfect and put on this, you can't possibly be depressed, you can't possibly be anxious, you can't possibly question anything or be, have any hurt or pain, because then you're not trusting God. Dave has taught me through the years that that's absolutely not true. Actually, that's not real at all, and you probably don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ if you aren't a little bit broken.
The challenge for you and I in this arena is that we may know that God forgives us, but we have trouble forgiving ourselves.
People forget we lost 100, 150 people my first year here. and really the first few months. So I shouldn't be surprised if people go. But I think there's some people who unfairly decided pretty quickly, this is not the guy.
I remember the first time David Vaughn threw the R word out there. It's true, you got to retire at some point in your life and live the second chapter. You know, between David Vaughn and our elders, they're just going to replace him with another David Vaughn who's newer in their career. So, perfect. In the meantime, this guy kept coming that was like the most theatrical, like, jerk. And then this John guy kept coming and dancing around on stage, and I swear he got more steps in one sermon than I do in an entire day.
How Jesus would do it, though. It's like, I have to go this way, right? I have to go this way. I have to be somewhere. I gotta meet with somebody.
It wasn't until I told another member of the church, I said, when are we gonna get to meet the guy that they're kind of looking into for Dave? And they said, don't you think by now it's John? I was like, no, absolutely not.
I was like, that man, that's hurtful.
My style individually, privately, is pretty much the same as you see on stage. But there is, in some people's mind, falsely, a disconnect. They want, is this guy real? What kind? It takes a while on the West Side for people to get that.
I think he does a good job of challenging people, and during those, sermon or speaking, really engaging people and challenging them on a one-on-one basis.
The approach is different, and I can see that David is mentoring John in many ways, in many facets, not just how he delivers his message, where those opportunities are, who we can reach.
He's extremely culturally relevant person, and not in a fake way, in a way that's very sincere. He wants to understand where people come from so that he can respond to them, so that he can lead into what real needs are.
I said, John, you're so good at reaching the margins. His story is so compelling. I just love it. But you've also got to reach the middle too. You got to teach, like all teachers know, you got to teach to all the students in the room.
So I was like, David, I can't pull back. I cannot be anything but what I believe God has called me to be, to preach God's word the way he's wired me to preach his word.
We need a different style. It's healthy. And so my advice to John and coaching to John was, hey, John, don't be inauthentic. Don't be somebody you're not.
I'm trying to help you reach the middle. The middle that is sitting there going, whoa, you are so different than David. I think I hear your heart. I think I understand why you're passionate. But if you get loud one more time, I just may walk.
John's favorite verse, I've become all things to all men, so that by all possible means I might save some. That's kind of my verse too, by the way. He didn't know it. So both of us have that outreach heart. So Jesus adjusted his cadence.
And even Jesus did not show all of himself to everyone.
When he did let them see who he was, they were freaked out, scared to death.
I think for a while in his teachings, it maybe was a little bit more focused. Certainly on just the one who was lost, and that was the only person he was talking to. And I have seen him just grow in a way to be able to speak to anyone in the audience, whether you have been to church your whole life or this is your first time attending.
He's not changing as a man. He's not changing his heart. He's not changing his passion. He's maturing, and it's a beautiful process to see.
When you know him and when you know what's underneath that personality, what's driving that passion, you know that it's a person that's doing what he's doing for Jesus.
My favorite thing about him is that he authentically loves people where they are. So this is a value of mine, is that we love people where they are. We don't ask them to change. We don't ask them to be something that they're not. We just love them where they're at. John does this so well.
That whatever it takes, short of sin, we said many times in those early years, to get people to know Jesus, to find the hope that he had that turned his life, John's life, around completely.
It was the first time that he referenced that we watch games.
I mean, we go nuts for our teams, right? We go nuts. Why not for our king?
And I realize I do that all the time. I have zero skin in the game. If the team wins or loses, it absolutely doesn't matter to my life. But then I go to church on Sunday and I keep my hands down. I sing quietly in case I don't sound great. And I don't cheer for the one person who actually died for my sins.
See, here's the deal. When our pride and our preferences are surpassed by our love and desperation for our Lord, watch what happens to our hands the next time we are invited to worship.
And that was the single turning point for how I started to think about John.
Was it an exact cultural fit? Not for Whitewater Crossing, Westwood Cheviot, 100-year-old church, right? But for the church that's going to be 110 and 120 and 150.
His heart for the lost is totally legitimate. And it really just bleeds over into you when you talk to him and you hear him and you experience it personally.
The first time I sat down and talked to him, and he was so calm and real, and I felt it.
The way the guy lives his life is all about being continually connected to everyone around him in a way where he's expressing no judgment, where his arms are open to them, where he's loving people, because he genuinely loves people.
My husband suffered a heart attack this year. Zero history of it, not ready, wasn't prepared. I lost my cool, and I called John Tisovich. And I was like, okay, I'm 100% all in when you're calling him to talk about your husband's heart attack.
So one of the things that kind of captured our attention when our family, not only when we moved to Cleves, but when we were first considering this call and making this transition, was this bridge. This caught our attention. The fact that there was a bridge that was built intentionally to bridge two worlds. You have this beautiful gift of a building that has been this incredible resource to reach the lost, to make disciples, to transform the community and change lives. But the intentionality of having a bridge into a community where there's a lot of need and a lot of hurt, and men, women, and students that are desperate for hope. It's about actually living out the gospel to your neighbor right next door, to ask the Spirit just to reveal to us some families and students and people that you will put in front of us, and let us be good news to them right now, right here. It's trying to live out a vision of being on mission for Jesus, not just talk about it.
I've always had a soft spot. I cry for lost people. That's been our passion. And that's what you have here. You can't delegate that. I love all of your gifts, but if the heart for lost people does not reside in this seat, we're in a world of trouble.
I think that I have been pleasantly pleased because it does take two. Somebody has to reach for the baton, somebody has to let go of the baton, but in our time of running with it together, which we're kind of doing, I'm loosening my grip, and I have confidence that he's going to run well with that. I have discovered layers that were better than I thought in John. In some leadership things, in some character things. He's a better leader than I am. And I was in some areas. There may be some areas where he's finding out, well, Vaughn's better than I thought he was.
Toothpaste, shampoo, soap. So we're going to pack bags for them. We also want to equip nurses because many times
So you got this, you have your information, you have your personal story with Rob and the anxiety. We then go back into the personal. Jerica is coming your way. She's going to do a flip of an order.
Okay.
All right, she's just coming your way. She's going to give you a new copy of her message.
Okay.
But she's coming your way, so there's going to be a change in order of slides.
Beautiful story, ask, video, ask. So she's gonna adjust that a little bit to where it feels like beautiful story, video,
Yeah, I agree.
information.
That's good, man.
So
Good
that's
catch.
a good call. That's
So I'm not running away or leaving behind my ministry of passion of lost people. I just get to do it in a different way.
And it is a bit daunting because, you know, we're own worst critics and we see all the insecurities and imperfections of self. And so the first thing is understanding, like, man, I can't do this on my own. I love that we get to be on mission to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. The things we've seen on this trip, the things we see in our backyard, there's so much hurt, and despair in the world, and we have the answer. We have the hope that can actually change lives. And our job is to take that hope. Like Paul says in 1 Corinthians, by all means necessary, whatever it takes, I'll climb as many mountains as I have to.
We're going to be the hands and feet of Jesus. This isn't a maybe an if, or should we. This is what we are doing. This is what we're called to. We're going to have opportunities to fill bags with food and necessities for children in need who are right here in our greater Cincinnati area and all over the world. We have opportunities to provide clothes and sort clothes for the homeless. We're going to put together some furniture. Because people should, have the dignity of actually having something to sit on instead of lawn chairs inside their house. We're going to have the opportunity to provide new shoes for kids who otherwise wouldn't have new shoes, because we think kids ought to have a pair of shoes. Be desperate enough to boldly take a healing step of action. So I reached out to my friends and I said, hey, we're going to talk about rescue. Can you just tell me how we could bless you? She said, right now, John, honestly, when my friends come into the house, we just love them right there in our living room, and we just need furniture. So I said, what's the cost on that? She said, I don't know, John. I don't like this kind of stuff. I said, okay, what's the cost? Just say the number. I said, $5,000. I said, okay, cool. All right, so Whitewater, I need $5,000. Because the Spirit of the Lord did a mighty work through His church, Whitewater, to say, not on our watch. We're going to rescue the slave.
Hey there, I am Andrea Holtman, the director of Weightless Anchor, which is the home that we're standing in right now. We actually welcome in women that are, stuck in the cycle of sex trafficking, many of them struggling with substance abuse and living without a home. Here in our house, we actually offer hot meals, showers, clothing, a safe place to rest, and most importantly, just love without cost. People actually ask me all the time how I got to Whitewater and when I started coming, and the answer is John Tizovich. The relationship has just kind of blossomed as he's been to Price Hill and has seen all the things that are needed, and just that this city really needs Jesus, and that we need people here that are speaking Jesus over them, and that are working with the poor, working with the homeless, working with the women that are trafficked, working with anyone that we can in this situation. He has a huge heart for that, which actually is what led to this amazing building. And now we have been blessed by Whitewater and the community, with John as the leader, to open this giant new house for our women to be able to serve more people, to be able to offer more services to the women in our community, and just to be able to bless people beyond anything we could ever imagine, because our God is bigger than we will ever know.
I don't look at it as the ending of David and Donna's ministry and the beginning of John and Kelly's ministry. I look at it as an extension of Donna and David's ministry, that John and Kelly are going to create their own legacy going forward.
I don't think this church has given Donna the credit that she deserves for the growth of the church. And I get all those accolades, but the lonely nights at home, the 14, 15-hour days that I work sometimes during capital campaigns and initiatives.
I've got to protect my loves. My love of Jesus, not the ministry I do for Jesus, but my devotion to Him, my love to Him, my love for Kelly, my love for the kids. And then everything else has got to come after that. But you have taught me that, so don't sacrifice that.
I told him this a while ago, but he is a wrecking ball for Jesus Christ, and I'm 100% on board. And I know his mission is to see a barrier and tear it down. John Tizovich makes me want to get out in the streets and be a leader and a champion for Jesus Christ as well.
So I think what you'll see with him is that passion is going to express itself in a relentless desire to include as many people in what we're doing as you possibly can. And that's going to reinforce some things that have already been done that are very good, but it's also going to take us into new frontiers and focus on people that maybe before were less open to church at all in a traditional sense.
The challenge now, though, is we got more to lose, so you're a little more risk averse. I mean, we had nothing, 350 people, and we had to have a capital campaign just to buy the land. 3 years it took us just to pay off the property. Now we look back and say, man, that's small, but when you got a $25 million complex and you got the staff the size we do and the wonderful giving that has taken place, you've got a little more to risk, or you are tempted not to risk. But you need to, again, because that puts you in a place to trust God and not yourself.
The day that we came in January of 2020, when the official offer was given to us, I stood up in the middle of one of the worship songs and I picked up Noah. I had him stand on a seat, and we turned around, and instead of looking at the platform, we looked out. Pre-COVID, the room was full of people, absolutely wall-to-wall full of people. And I said to him, I don't know why, buddy, but Daddy's been asked to lead this.
I don't support some of John's vision. I support all of John's vision. We've talked privately. I know where he's going. I trust it. It's exactly what I would do if I was his age and had his energy and I had another 19 years in me. And I thought, he's doing exactly what should happen in this church.
To see him evolve in this decision and this process and this succession, and to see where he is now, there's just this peace about him that was never there before. And I think that he really feels peace in the decision and where we are, and this is truly what God had made him for. And so that's been really cool for me to see that change in him.
I fell in love with this church because of the grace that I saw them extend to people. People in my family, my neighbors, my friends, and I continue to fall in love with this church every single day because of that grace that's still extended to me, to my family, to my friends. So we are in such good hands, and the future is so bright, and I cannot wait.
No?
Cool. Thank you guys.
All right.
Guys. Mark.
It's fun.